It is quite often the propaganda of the drug war that leads people to assume this necessity that they're druggies and what we got to do, whatever it takes. Your response, Steve Downing?
Well, you said we use the word drug war. Anytime we're, let's look at the political level. Anytime you have a social problem, it seems that the politicians, their answer is always enforcement. Their answer is always to go to their law enforcement. Their answer is always to begin a war on this problem. And this is a civil society. We shouldn't be starting wars on our own people, regardless of who they are or what they're doing. We need to look at law enforcement as a professional organization that has professionals, public servants, doing the job of law enforcement and making sure that there's a division of function where do not ask a law enforcement officer to do a job that they're not trained to do. If you have a social problem like mental illness, it shouldn't be the officers, police officers, handling that. Now, they might be along to help protect the social worker in dealing with it and bringing the situation down and de-escalating, or spend some money and train the officers. Get a little better educated officer on the job that knows about those kinds of things. But let's not always blame the police. Let's blame the politicians for declaring the war and giving the job of fighting the war to the police when they should be giving the job to other people. In other words, the homeless problem. Why should the police be dealing with a homeless problem? Whether it's involving drug addiction or mental illness or economic failure, why should the police be involved in that on any level? Unless there's a disturbance that they need to use to keep the peace. So we need to start with our politicians rather than tearing apart our police organizations all the time. And if we did that, we might be able to change the culture of many of these police organizations that think of themselves as warriors rather than thinking of themselves as public servants. SWAT is sexy. They have all the uniforms and they have the equipment, they have the big guns. But in Los Angeles, they train 50% of the time. That's very expensive. Now comes along Reagan. He hands out all the money for the drug war, more than Nixon ever thought of doing. And then they created that, I forget the name of the legislation, where surplus military equipment can go to local police departments. And when they started that program, there were no conditions. You want one? You got one. So now you have not a chief of police of a department of 10,000 that can really take and train people and allow them to train 50% of their on-duty time. But you have small departments. We want one. We want a SWAT team. So now they get their tank and they get their big guns and quiet communities, no real need for that stuff. Really, they should be thinking of a regional application. And so pretty soon they're trying to find ways to use this equipment and these poorly trained people who train off duty sometimes because the department can't afford to take the detective off of the detective desk and give him 5 hours a week of training. It's highly expensive. So they're not trained as well, but they need something to use this equipment on. So pretty soon they're using SWAT to serve a marijuana warrant somewhere. And that's where all That's where all of the problems come from. It's untrained officers in smaller departments that are using SWAT squads for situations that do not require them tactically. And so you put that poor training with an unjustified objective, and people are dying across this country because our application of policy is bad. And so SWAT teams need to be examined across the country. And if you want one, make sure you can afford it. Make sure that you have the right criteria for rolling, and make sure you're training 50% of the time. And then that'll be a true SWAT squad that is there to protect the community and not to be a killer machine that just runs wild.
I'm Dean Becker. I want to thank you for watching this video. I hope you found it motivating. Now please like and share and subscribe if you want more content. Now to hear a longer interview with this week's video guest, I request that you visit our website. Links are in the description below. Now each year we produce hundreds of drug war related programs for a network of broadcast affiliates in the US and Canada. Now we also produce lots of content for YouTube as well. And you can access nearly 9,000 of our programs at drugtruth.net.